This is a lesson over the respiratory system. This is Human Body Step 8. It's a Level 3 lesson. Let's start by reviewing the functions of the respiratory system. The first function is that the respiratory system gets oxygen into the body. The second function is that the respiratory system gets rid of carbon dioxide, which is a waste to our body. Let's go over the respiratory system parts. The first part is the nostrils or the mouth. This is the place where air enters the body. Air travels through the nasal passage from the nostrils or mouth and into the trachea. Now, during the last lesson over the digestive system, you learned about the esophagus. The trachea is right beside the esophagus. But instead of bringing food down into the stomach, the trachea brings air from the nasal passage into the lungs. The lungs are an important part of the respiratory system. It's made of tissues. It's made of tiny air sacs, and those tiny air sacs are surrounded by tiny blood vessels called capillaries. This is the place where oxygen from the lungs go into the capillaries, and carbon dioxide comes out of the capillaries and into the lungs. So every time you inhale, oxygen goes into your lungs, into the capillaries. Carbon dioxide comes out of the capillaries, and as you exhale, the carbon dioxide leaves the lungs. In order for the lungs to work, you have a large muscle underneath the rib cage called the diaphragm. The diaphragm is made out of smooth muscles, and it contracts to pull air into the lungs and relaxes to push air out of the lungs. Now let's talk about how the respiratory system interacts with some other body systems. The first system that we're going to talk about is the muscular system. The diaphragm is a large muscle that's part of the respiratory system, and it's made out of smooth muscles. So remember that smooth muscles are controlled by the brain stem. They're involuntary. And the purpose of the diaphragm is to pull oxygen into the lungs and push carbon dioxide out of the lungs. We're also going to talk about the respiratory system interacting with the nervous system. So your brain, spinal cord, and nerves or neurons control the involuntary smooth muscles of your diaphragm. Remember, your brain stem is what controls those types of muscles. This allows you to inhale and exhale all the time, when you're asleep, when you're awake, anytime that you want. You don't have to think about it. That's the good part. The third interaction is the respiratory system working with the digestive system. Now, in the last lesson, you learned that oxygen is needed in order to turn food into energy, and that happens in the small intestines. So the respiratory systems, or the lungs, is what helps get the oxygen into the bloodstream. And the bloodstream carries the oxygen to the small intestines. Once they're in the small intestines, it helps break down food into energy. That is used by all cells throughout your body. It also helps with organs. The final part, or the final interactions of the body systems, are the respiratory system working with the circulatory system. So I touched upon this a little bit already. Your lungs are surrounded by tiny blood vessels called capillaries, and the capillaries are part of the circulatory system. They are responsible for transporting oxygen to other body systems and transporting carbon dioxide into the lungs to be released. That was a lesson over the respiratory system, Human Body Step 8. This was a Level 3 lesson.